Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the 2021 Mazda 3 Turbo. Now a quick bit of backstory, because Mazda used to make speed or performance variants of its older models and they were just called the Speed. So this used to be the Mazda Speed 3, they had a Mazda Speed 6 and even the Mazda Speed MX-5. But that sort of performance variation died a couple of years ago and we haven't really seen performance variants from Mazda other than the MX-5, which is just an all-out sports car. But the revival of the turbo model with this generation Mazda 3 gives the model, again, a bit of a sportier edge and a ton of power. So let's talk differences between the turbo and the standard car. You're still getting a 2.5 liter engine. The only difference is that the standard Mazda 3 has a naturally aspirated version and the turbo obviously has a turbocharged version of that engine. Now, in the turbo, you're getting 227 horsepower and 310 pounds-feet of torque, which is a lot considering that this is a small hatchback. So you shouldn't look at this like a sort of hyped up trim level of the Mazda 3. It's more leaning closer to what a GTI is in terms of power and performance, at least. Now, the main difference between this particular model that I'm driving and other turbo models is that this is the all-wheel drive variant. So this one is essentially fully loaded up. So this is the turbo, all-wheel drive Mazda 3. This is also a premium, which means you get all of the nice little features, and particularly one of the features that we'll get into later is this interior, which I think is probably the best part of the entire car. Now, in terms of a driving experience, that torque figure, 310 pounds-feet of torque, is a lot. And the Mazda 3 really does take off. As soon as you put your foot down, I could go down a gear, put my foot down, and it just sort of takes off. It really just sort of shoots off, which again, very cool. And something I wasn't expecting from the turbo model. I thought it would be kind of like, there are other model ranges, like let's say you look at a BMW or something like that that has a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine or a turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, and yes, there's a step in power, but it isn't really all that drastic. In the Mazda 3, there is a noticeable difference in the amount of shove, the amount of sort of aggressiveness that this car really does put out. Now, you're still getting a 6-speed automatic transmission. It is exactly very similar to what you get in the standard Mazda 3. I'm just assuming that this unit is beefed up to handle the extra power, but again, it's still a 6-speed automatic, kind of like the standard car. Now, one thing I want to set the record straight immediately is that while this does have Volkswagen GTI power, it doesn't really handle like a GTI at all. Now, what you have to imagine this is a standard Mazda 3, which is a very comfortable, very good daily driver. In fact, I have family members that have bought this exact car for those reasons. But it isn't an overly agile or sharp sort of sporty hatch. It isn't a hot hatch by any means. So think of it this way, as a hatchback with a lot of power rather than a hot, sort of performance, almost track-ready hatchback, because the Mazda 3 doesn't have the sort of sharpness and agility and capability that a GTI does, even though it might have the powers. Now, comparatively speaking, at least from the driver's seat, I would still argue that a GTI feels faster than this. And it's not because of the power, it's more so the transmission, because the GTI, you still get that dual clutch automatic that shifts pretty much instantly. This transmission in this car, you can tell it's not quite as aggressive. Even in the manual modes, if you try to do your downshifts, there is a noticeable delay from when you hit the paddle to when the shift actually happens. But, again, it's more so about this car being daily driver oriented than all out sort of sporty oriented. And the upside, I think, of this transmission particularly is the fact that what it does very smoothly. It might not be the quickest shifting transmission in the world, but it is incredibly smooth, which if you're driving this on a daily basis, that's what counts. But so the way I see this then is, if you want straight line speed every once in a while and you want a comfortable ride the rest of the time, then that's more in the line of the Mazda 3. If you want a hot hatch that's more sporty, agile, and has sort of, definitely greater performance abilities, then you're going to want the GTI. Now, in terms of on-road noise, I would argue that the Mazda 3 is significantly quieter than all of its competitors. Now, even right now I'm accelerating, it's still not overly loud in here. So even when you put your foot down, the engine itself doesn't sort of roar and sort of make a lot of intrusive noise, which again sort of gives you a little hint that it isn't sort of an all-out sporty hatch. It's more so a daily driver with power. But on the highway, again, it's very, very comfortable. The suspension on this car is something that I love, that they didn't try to turn it into a hot hatch. So you don't have to compromise in the ride quality or the quietness, all the things that are really going to matter when you're driving this car every single day. So in this aspect, this is where the Mazda 3 really does shine, because not only are the materials finished very nicely, but the refinement, and I think that's what makes a true luxury car, is how actually genuinely refined it is. You know, when you're in it, can you hear the radio? Is the radio quality good? This one has the Bose upgraded audio system. Those are the things that really matter on a daily basis. The seats are incredibly comfortable. They don't have aggressive bowstring because, again, they're not sporty. But again, they're very comfortable to sit in. You can do long journeys. They're very adjustable. So I think anybody, even, you know, very tall people can get very situated in this car and be very comfortable with relative ease, which I think is very important for a daily driver. So let's talk interior layout, because again, like I mentioned earlier, the interior is my favorite part about this car, because you'll see there's like sort of different levels of surfaces from the dash to this little leather layout in the middle, and I love that it's the same color as the actual seats. Now in the options list, it says that this interior is red, and I think that's not exactly a fair characterization of what the interior actually looks like, because it's not so much red as it is sort of a burgundy maroon kind of color. It looks very upscale, because I feel like if they had fitted to like a bright red interior, it would almost look a little cheap. I don't really love super bright red interiors, but I think this sort of darker sort of maroon kind of finish looks very classy, very upscale. Now you can only have this leather package if you get the genuine leather in the Mazda 3. You don't have to get the turbo for it. You can get a regular Mazda 3. You can get the red leather. Now in front of me, I do have a nice horizontal screen. You get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto connectivity. It is still wired connectivity, which again, you know, some other manufacturers are offering wireless connectivity at this point, but you still have to plug it in. For this one, this particular premium trim also has a heads-up display, which I find really useful. Has a ton of safety features, whether it be automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, you know, you have your adaptive cruise control. All the things that you're really going to want on a daily basis to keep you safe are here. They're present and they work well. In front of me, I've got a semi-digital dash. There's some analog gauges, but the center sort of gauge is actually a screen. It's very configurable, and I like that it offers a good amount of flexibility. Overall, the interior quality of everything that you touch, even though it is plastic, it feels well made. It feels high quality. There are no weird rattles or anything throughout this interior. It feels very well put together. Something that I think Mazda has been doing an excellent job of in recent years, because the brand has stated that it wants to move more up market. And I think this Mazda 3 is definitely a good example of that. Would I pick this over a Honda Civic or a Corolla, like I mentioned earlier? Absolutely, I would. Even in the premium levels of some competitors, they don't really match up to the Mazda 3. So now that you know what it's like to drive, let's talk about the way the Mazda 3 looks, because the Mazda is available in two body styles. You can have it as a sedan or as a hatchback. Now this particular turbo model, how it's spec'd out, I think is especially nice, because you have all of these little gloss black elements in the front headlights. In the lower also, you have this sort of black gloss black lip, which highlights sort of gloss black 18-inch wheels, which again ties with the mirror caps, the side skirts. You even have this little gloss black wing in the back, which I think all of it ties really well. One thing that doesn't come across on camera is the color, because this white looks sort of very flat, sort of standard kind of white on camera, but in person you can see that it is almost more like a sort of a pearl white. It has all these little sparkle in it. It really does shine. So overall, as a sort of package, I think the styling of this car makes it look a little bit more expensive than some of its competitors, because it's just a little bit sharper, a little bit better design, and I really dig it. Now I mentioned this is the hatchback, so let's talk about that hatch specifically. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you have this little gloss black wing, which I think is really unique. You don't get that in the standard car, and I think really it sets off this particular model. You also have this diffuser, which is a lot larger and a lot more aggressive than you get in the standard car. I think along with this diffuser, I would have wanted maybe some larger, maybe sort of like, you know, kind of like more pronounced exhaust tips, but you don't get that. You have these little, you know, proximity sensors in the rear, which I think is great. Now, if we open it up, tons of space in the back. The seats do collapse, so you can have a flat surface. If you want to put a bicycle, you can put very, very large objects. And I think this car is in the class where you really don't need a sort of one of the small SUVs on offer when you can have this hatchback. It drives significantly better than a small SUV, and it still has comparable space. But again, from a standpoint of design, I think the hatch is the better looking one. I like these taillights look incredibly sharp, and I think just overall the design of the hatch is my favorite one. I think it's the pick of the bunch. Now, I know I touched on this in the driving portion, but I think it's worth going over because it is, again, the most important part of the turbo model, which is the turbocharged engine. Again, it's a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, develops 227 horsepower, 310 pounds-feet of torque. All of that power goes to all 4 wheels via a 6-speed automatic transmission, although you have to keep in mind that the all-wheel drive system is front drive biased. Now, you don't have to have this engine with all-wheel drive. You can have it with front-wheel drive if you prefer. But overall, I think for me, I would probably go with front-wheel drive. I live in Florida. I don't really have a use for all-wheel drive like that. But if you are in snowy scenarios, you can have a powerful all-wheel drive car from a Mazda 3. Overall, I think this engine is great. It makes a ton of power. It's really, really fun, like as we saw, you know, kind of driving around. But I think for me, I think the standard car is really good. Like, it's really, really good. Even the standard non-turbocharged version of this engine is still very, very good. So whether you go turbo or you go naturally aspirated, there really isn't any wrong way to go. The only real main deciding factor there is going to be your budget. So there we have it, the 2021 Mazda 3 Turbo. And is it an all-out GTI competitor? I don't think so, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the Mazda 3 isn't exactly thinking about being anything other than what it is. It's a comfortable, powerful, well-built daily driver. So don't go into this thinking you're gonna get a very sporty and agile sort of hot hatch out of this, because it's frankly not. It feels very soft, very plushy, very comfortable. But again, if you're driving on a daily basis, that might be what you want, and you just want a little bit more power out of your daily driver. But again, it is worth reiterating that the standard Mazda 3 is still a fantastic car, even with its naturally aspirated engine with lower horsepower. That's probably, again, it's still my pick. I would pick the standard one, the standard version, because you can get it at a lower price point and you can still have the same interior quality, all the good techie bits inside. And with that, I think that really sums up this car beautifully. And so I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again very soon.